Your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
Good morning and welcome to Weekend Breakfast. I'm Miriam Korowa.
And I'm Andrew Gagan, making news this morning. Education shapes up as an election battleground, with the government set to give schools a $1 billion funding boost.
Also ahead, closing the gap on cigarettes. The government launches a new ad campaign targeting Indigenous smokers.
Hundreds of Iraqi protesters stormed the parliament in Baghdad, demanding changes to the government.
And the Tigers suffer their fifth straight loss in the AFL, going down to Port Adelaide at the MCG last night. Hello, thanks for joining us. It's Sunday, the 1st of May.
It may be bad for the Tigers. They're still not as bad as Fremantle.
Not as bad as that other team who shall remain nameless. It's not a good season for you, is
continues.
it? I know. What are we going to do? You're going to have to turn your attention elsewhere?
Well, that's right. Maybe another code, Miriam.
Top stories this morning. The federal government has announced a $1.2 billion boost to school funding as part of a plan to lift students' performance and results. In 2014, the coalition cut education funding by $30 billion over 10 years by reducing the rate of spending growth. The state strongly opposed the cuts, arguing they had no way of plugging the funding gap. Federal Education Minister Simon Birmingham will today announce the coalition will boost funding by $1.2 billion between 2018 and 2020, and increasing spending growth to about 3.5%. The funding will be tied to a range of reforms, including requiring schools to assess all Year 1 students' reading, numeracy and phonics skills, and provide parents with annual progress reports.
The government has launched a new anti-smoking ad campaign aimed at Indigenous Australians.
My name is Ted, and family is my story. Don't make smokes your story. Download the app.
It comes as a recent survey of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders found smoking rates have been declining within the group. The Australian Bureau of Statistics survey found 45% of people smoked in 2002, but today that figure is down to 39%. However, smoking still accounts for 1 in 5 Indigenous deaths. It's hoped the $10 million ad campaign can help push more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders to give up the habit.
An investigation will be launched into the death of a 19-year-old woman killed in an equestrian accident yesterday. Caitlin Fisher was competing in the Sydney International Horse Trials when her horse clipped a jump fence. She fell and the horse landed on top of her. It's the second time a rider has died in as many months. The International Equestrian Foundation's Wayne Roycroft will head an investigation. He says the teenager's death was a tragic accident.
The body of an Australian teenager who died in a scooter crash in Bali earlier this week has been flown back to Australia. Indonesian police say 16-year-old Lockie Cornerton died when his scooter crashed into a concrete wall while he was driving out of a hotel basement on Thursday night. He'd been holidaying in Kuta with his family when the accident occurred, and his parents are reportedly accompanying his body back to their hometown of Orange in New South Wales. More than $50,000 has been raised to help the family after a crowdfunding appeal was organised by a family friend.
Police say a 14-year-old boy has fallen into a bonfire during an out-of-control party in Sydney's southwest. Emergency crews were called to a home at Rossmore last night where they found the teenager with burns to his face. He's been taken to the Children's Hospital at Westmead, where he remains in a stable condition. Police say several youths poured petrol over an ambulance parked at the party when the teenager was being taken to hospital. Officers have arrested an 18-year-old man and he's been questioned at the Green Valley Police Station.
Overseas, and Iraqi police have fired live rounds into the air after hundreds of protesters stormed the fortified Green Zone in the capital, Baghdad. The demonstrators overran security and made their way to Parliament shouting, "Peaceful." This comes after politicians failed to reform the country's quota system, which balances the influence of various ethnic and party factions. The country's Prime Minister says the quotas have led to widespread corruption, and he's been pushing for months for a vote on a new cabinet. Thousands of demonstrators remain camped outside the building, and security officials say a special forces unit has been dispatched to protect sensitive sites.
The International Organisation for Migration says 84 refugees are missing after their inflatable boat sank off the Libyan coast. An Italian cargo ship has rescued 26 people from the sinking vessel and they've been transferred to the Italian island of Lampedusa. The nationalities of the survivors are not yet known. More than 350,000 people have made the dangerous voyage from Libya to Italy at the beginning of 2014.
An American mother and her daughter have been rescued after spending 4 nights lost during a hike in New Zealand. The pair had planned for a day's walk at the Kapa Kapa Nui track north of Wellington, but became stranded in rough terrain. After not being able to find their way back, they survived by staying calm and sticking together for warmth. A rescue helicopter spotted them and they have been taken to a Wellington hospital where they're being treated for dehydration and exhaustion.
Rescue workers in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, are still searching through the ruins of a collapsed building for survivors. At least 12 people were killed when the building collapsed during heavy rains on Friday night. More than 100 others have been taken to hospital. One man has been pulled alive from the rubble, and there are reports that rescue workers can hear a woman and a child calling for help. The President has ordered the arrest of the collapsed building's owners. The director of the National Disaster Operations Centre says rescuers are being careful not to destabilise the site.
We are still searching the site before we bring in the heavy machines. I think it appears like some people are getting impatient, but as it is, we have got indications that there are people who are still trapped in the rumble, and we don't want to use the heavy machines because it is likely to crumble and crush them.
And still in Kenya, the President has set fire to millions of dollars worth of ivory, saying the tusks are worthless once they're removed. Tusks and horns from around 8,000 elephants and rhinos have gone up in flames in bonfires that are expected to burn for days. President Uhuru Kenyatta says it's the largest amount of ivory to be collected and destroyed. He's warned that the ivory trade is killing the country's natural heritage.
Let us also be clear. Poaching and trafficking in wildlife is now a branch of international crime. The fight against it will be won by alliances across nations and continents. The first step must be closer cooperation, especially among the states that hold Africa's remaining elephant herds.
More than 30 lions rescued from abuse in Peruvian and Colombian circuses have been flown to South Africa in what campaigners call the largest ever airlift of big cats. The 33 lions, with names such as Zeus and Shakira, were freed after the use of wild animals in circuses was outlawed in South American nations 3 years ago. After the long and tiresome journey, the lions will now see out their retirement at the Amoya Big Cat Sanctuary north of Johannesburg.
Now for news in sport, here's Nick Lockyer.
There's growing pressure on Richmond coach Damien Hardwick after his side slumped to its 5th straight AFL loss. The Tigers coach described the 35-point defeat to an understrength Port Adelaide as dumb and embarrassing. Richmond has just 1 win from its first 6 games, its worst start to a season since 2010. Gold Coast coach Rodney Eade was also furious with his side after it lost to Geelong by 20 goals, and GWS has strengthened its title credentials with a 75-point thumping of Hawthorn.
Thank you for your company here on Weekend Breakfast. Still to come. The federal government has taken another step in its bid to reduce the number of Indigenous Australians who die from smoking-related diseases.
Also ahead, widespread drought across central India has forced authorities to take radical measures, including supplying one city with water by train from hundreds of kilometres away.
And pop star Beyonce seems to have eclipsed expectations.
Let's move to India, where several states are facing the worst drought in decades, with more than 300 million people affected.
As temperatures in some areas hit 45 degrees Celsius, crops have been decimated and drinking water is running short. South Asia correspondent James Bennett reports from the Indian state of Maharashtra.
This is what the water supply looks like for a city of 500,000 people right now. India, 10 states of it are in the grip of a crippling drought. Some 330 million people are affected, and this train has just come 350 odd kilometres inland to the city of Latur, where if it wasn't for this train, most residents would simply have to pack up and leave, because the wells, the rivers, the reservoirs, they're all dry and they're utterly dependent upon the 5 or sometimes around 10 litres of water per person a day that this train brings to them. As you can see, it's extremely hot, temperatures regularly exceeding 40 degrees, and even once this train has disgorged its water and it's made its way into tankers and is delivered to supply points, it means long waits in the heat for usually the women who are going to collect it. And unfortunately, in some instances, that has proven tragic. One 11-year-old girl lost her life waiting for water.
If you don't get drinking water also, then how can you survive? That's the most important part of our life.
Across India, there are widespread effects. It's meant crop failures. Farmers have had to sell off livestock. There's tragically been a rise in the incidence of farmer suicides as well. And there are also more broader industrial impacts. The city of Aurangabad, where a lot of India's beer is brewed, its supply has had to be curtailed as well. And even cricket has been affected. The Indian Premier League has had to put a halt to matches in the state of Maharashtra, where we are at the moment, because water use and potential wastage is just so sensitive, it's deemed inappropriate to water grounds to play cricket matches. Now, the monsoon is expected to be a better one this year. It is expected to replenish what's been 2 very lean years, but it is still weeks away.
Let's take a look at the satellite image. A cold front moving over the southeast is bringing squally showers, storms and strong winds to Tasmania, Victoria and New South Wales. 2 troughs are triggering showers over New South Wales and southern Queensland. And a region of low pressure is generating thundery showers over the western tropics. Looking around the country now, and in Queensland, patchy showers and moderate winds along the coast. Possible storms in the south, dry elsewhere. In New South Wales, showers and storms in the east and north, dry in the west, becoming cooler throughout. To Victoria, rain and storms across most of the state, windy, becoming drier in the west. In Tasmania, windy with showers heaviest in the northeast, a cold and cloudy day. In South Australia, showers heaviest in the southeast, dry inland, becoming cooler in southern and central regions. In WA, cool throughout southern areas, hot in the northwest, mostly dry with easterly winds. In the Northern Territory, showers and possible storms in the northeast, remaining dry throughout central and southern areas. Looking ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capital cities, Brisbane, a shower or 2 and a possible storm. Sydney and Canberra will be sunny. Melbourne, partly cloudy. Hobart, a possible late shower. Adelaide, a shower or 2. Partly cloudy in Perth. And Darwin, a possible shower or storm.
Check the front pages of Sunday's newspapers, see what they have to say.
Well, Queensland Sunday Mail has knives out for the leader. State opposition leader Lawrence Springbok could be facing a challenge as early as this week.
South Australia's Sunday Mail, Operation Kill Carp, a budget announcement will see the herpes virus released into the River Murray to kill millions of European carp fish.
The Sunday Telegraph, schools will be offered $1 billion in the budget if schools adopt a back-to-basics learning style, including setting a minimum standard of literacy and numeracy for school leavers.
And the Sun Herald also leads with that story, the $1 billion funding boost.
The Herald Sun leads with the tragic story of a Victorian woman who died at an inquest event in Sydney yesterday.
The Sunday Age has an interview with Theo Johnston. He was a child at the centre of a 60 Minutes report in 2002 when he was abducted from Greece by his mother.
The Sunday Tasmanian leads with a story on Tasmania's real estate market, which is going from strength to strength, led by demand for homes valued at $1 million and above.
The Sunday Territorian, hallelujah, the dry season has finally arrived in the top end after 182 days of the hottest wet season ever.
The Sunday Times is leading with the funding boost expected for schools in this coming week's budget. Plus, Peter Credlin is joining News Corp as a columnist.
Police in Libya say they've arrested at least 70 people who were about to attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea.
Libya's Coast Guard faces a huge task, patrolling hundreds of kilometres of remote beaches, with people smugglers not their only target.
It's not your usual day at the beach. This is the Misrata Coast Guard on patrol. Libya has 1,800 kilometres of coastline, and protecting it from threats is a priority. Small patrols like this one are given a specific area to investigate. They typically look for smugglers, people traffickers and armed groups like ISIL bringing in weapons and fighters.
We have two objectives: to protect the sea and look for illegal migrants on land. We patrol up toward the city of Sirte looking for threats from ISIL. When we find one, we can call in air patrols and also try to engage. But up until now, ISIL won't engage us directly.
A typical patrol can last for around 12 hours, and sometimes they set up spot checkpoints on the beach. For the soldiers, the job is important for security and provides a much-needed livelihood.
I've always loved open spaces, the desert, the beach. I like being outdoors. Libya isn't stable and there are problems, so this is a chance to do some good for Libya.
This patrol is a small part of the coastline defence, but it's necessary for other reasons than just protection.
These patrols are very useful for intelligence gathering as well. Now, in between here and the ISIL stronghold of Sirte are a number of fishing villages. And the information that the fishermen give them is useful to both sides.
But there is another more pressing problem: drug smuggling. With such an open coastline, it's difficult to seize all the shipments coming in. It's a big source of revenue for ISIL and other criminals. This is one of the longest stretches of undeveloped and unprotected coastlines in North Africa. The Misrata Coast Guard has a lot of work.